Marcus Wellington had served the royal family for 15 years. His uniform bore the golden emblem of the crown, and his chest displayed medals earned through countless hours of silent vigilance. Standing 6 feet tall with shoulders broad enough to fill any doorway, he commanded respect wherever he walked. But today, as his black sedan pulled into the driveway of his modest suburban home, Marcus felt smaller than he had in years. The 3-month assignment had been grueling. Protecting the young prince during his diplomatic tour across Europe meant sleepless nights, constant alertness, and being away from everything that truly mattered to him. His wife Sarah had sent updates through carefully worded text messages, but nothing could replace being home with his family. His daughter Emma, just turned 16, had been preparing for her final school exams when he left. His son James, 14, had begged him to stay for the regional football championship. Marcus turned off the engine and sat in the silence for a moment. The house looked exactly as he remembered it. Sarah's rose bushes bloomed along the front path, their red petals catching the late afternoon sunlight. The white picket fence still needed a fresh coat of paint, something he had promised to handle before his assignment began. Everything appeared normal, peaceful even. He gathered his single travel bag from the back seat. Years of royal protocol had taught him to pack light and move efficiently. His civilian clothes felt strange after months in formal uniform, but Sarah had insisted he change before coming home. She wanted their reunion to be about family, not duty. The front door opened before he reached it. Sarah stood in the doorway, her auburn hair catching the breeze. She wore the blue dress he had bought her for their anniversary, the one that matched her eyes perfectly. But something was different. Her smile seemed forced, and she kept glancing over her shoulder toward the interior of the house. Marcus dropped his bag and wrapped his arms around her. She felt tense against his chest, not the warm embrace he had been dreaming about during those long European nights. When she pulled back, her eyes held a mixture of relief and something else he could not quite identify. Fear, perhaps. Inside, the house smelled of her homemade bread and the lavender candles she loved to burn. Family photographs lined the hallway, chronicling years of birthdays, holidays, and school achievements. Marcus noticed several new pictures had been added during his absence. Emma at her school dance, James scoring a goal, Sarah at her book club meeting. Life had continued without him. Sarah busied herself in the kitchen, talking rapidly about neighborhood news and work gossip. Mrs. Henderson next door had adopted a new cat. The grocery store was under new management. James had made the varsity football team despite being only 14. Emma had received early acceptance letters from 3 universities. Marcus listened while unpacking his few belongings. Something felt off, but he attributed it to the adjustment of being home. 3 months was the longest he had ever been away from his family. Perhaps they all needed time to reconnect. James bounded down the stairs, now nearly as tall as his father and sporting a patchy attempt at a beard. They shook hands formally before Marcus pulled him into a bear hug. The boy had grown stronger during the summer months, his frame filling out from hours of football practice. "Dad, you should have seen my goal against Riverside High," James said, his voice cracking with excitement. "Coach says I might make captain next year if I keep improving." Marcus felt a stab of guilt. He had missed so many important moments while standing guard over someone else's child. The prince was a good young man, but he was not Marcus's son. These were the sacrifices that came with his position, sacrifices that seemed heavier with each passing year. "Where's Emma?" Marcus asked, looking around the living room. "I brought her something from Paris." Sarah's hands stilled on the dishcloth she was holding. James glanced toward his mother, then back at his father. An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. "She's upstairs," Sarah finally said, "studying for her chemistry exam. You know how focused she gets before big tests." Marcus nodded, though Emma had never been one to hide away when he returned from assignments. Usually, she would rush down to hear stories about his travels and examine whatever small gifts he had managed to find for her. She was his little girl, even at 16, and their bond had always been special. "I'll go surprise her," Marcus said, starting toward the stairs. Maybe give her a few minutes, Sarah called after him. She's been working so hard lately, very dedicated to her studies. But Marcus was already climbing the wooden steps, each one creaking under his weight, just as they always had. He had been looking forward to this moment for weeks. In his bag was a small music box from a Parisian antique shop, the kind Emma had admired in movies. Inside, a tiny ballerina twirled to Chopin, something he knew would make her smile. The upstairs hallway was dimmer than usual. Emma's bedroom door was closed, unusual for a Saturday afternoon. Soft music played from behind it, but not her typical pop songs. This was classical music, the kind she only listened to when she was upset about something. Marcus knocked gently on the door. "Emma, it's Dad, I'm home." No response came from inside the room. He knocked again, slightly louder this time. "Emma, sweetheart, I have something for you from Paris." Still nothing. Marcus felt his training kick in, the same instincts that had kept him alert during countless security details. Something was wrong. His daughter would never ignore his homecoming, especially not after 3 months apart. He turned the doorknob slowly and pushed the door open. The room was neat as always. Emma's textbooks arranged precisely on her desk, her violin case propped in its usual corner. But the girl sitting at her window seat, silhouetted against the fading daylight, did not turn to greet him. "Emma?" She finally looked toward him, and Marcus felt his world tilt on its axis. His training, his years of protecting others, his careful observation skills. None of it had prepared him for what he saw in that moment. Marcus froze in the doorway, his breath catching in his throat. Emma's left eye was swollen shut, the skin around it painted in shades of purple and yellow. A cut ran along her bottom lip, and her right cheek bore the unmistakable pattern of finger marks. She had tried to cover the bruises with makeup, but nothing could hide the damage completely. The music box slipped from his hands and crashed to the floor, the tiny ballerina breaking free from her spring and rolling under Emma's bed. Neither father nor daughter moved to retrieve it. "Emma," Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible. "What happened to you?" His daughter turned back toward the window, wrapping her arms around her knees. She wore a long-sleeved shirt despite the warm weather, and Marcus noticed how carefully she moved, as if every gesture caused pain. "It's nothing, Dad," she said quietly. "Just an accident at school. I fell down some stairs." Marcus had spent 15 years reading people, detecting lies, identifying threats. Every instinct screamed that his daughter was not telling the truth. The pattern of bruises, the way she held herself, the fear he had seen in Sarah's eyes downstairs, none of it matched a simple fall. He stepped into the room and knelt beside her chair. Up close, the damage was even worse. Her knuckles were scraped, suggesting she had fought back against whatever had happened to her. A small bandage covered what looked like a bite mark on her wrist. "Emma, look at me," Marcus said gently. "Please." She shook her head, fresh tears streaming down her face. "You were gone, Dad. You were supposed to protect people, but you weren't here to protect me." The words hit Marcus harder than any physical blow he had ever taken. His daughter was right. He had been thousands of miles away, ensuring the safety of a stranger, while his own child had been hurt in ways he was only beginning to understand. "Tell me what really happened," he said. "I'm here now." Emma remained silent for a long time, staring out at the garden where she used to play as a little girl. The swing set Marcus had built for her 8th birthday still hung from the old oak tree, unused now but preserved like a monument to simpler times. "There's this boy at school," she finally began, her voice so quiet Marcus had to lean closer to hear her. "Derek Thompson, he's been asking me out since the beginning of the term. I kept saying no, but he wouldn't listen." Marcus felt ice forming in his veins. Derek Thompson. He filed the name away in his memory with the precision of a man accustomed to remembering details that could mean the difference between life and death. "He cornered me after school on Thursday," Emma continued. "Said if I wouldn't be his girlfriend, willingly he would make me understand what I was missing. When I tried to leave, he grabbed me." The story came out in broken fragments. Derek had pushed Emma into an empty classroom. When she tried to scream, he had covered her mouth with his hand. She had fought him, clawing at his face and arms, but He was bigger and stronger. A senior on the football team, built like the men Marcus worked alongside in security details. He said things, Emma whispered. Terrible things about what he wanted to do to me. When I kept fighting, he got angry and started hitting me. Said I needed to learn respect. Marcus closed his eyes, forcing himself to remain calm. His training included controlling emotional responses under extreme stress, but nothing had prepared him for hearing about his daughter being assaulted. His hands trembled as he reached out to touch her shoulder. Did he? Marcus could not finish the question. No, Emma said quickly. Mrs. Patterson came back for something she forgot. She heard the noise and opened the door. Derek ran out through the other exit before she could see him clearly. Marcus felt a small measure of relief, but it was overshadowed by rage building in his chest. His daughter had been attacked, terrorized, and hurt while he was playing bodyguard to someone who already had a dozen other protectors. Why didn't you call me? He asked. Why didn't Mom call me? Emma finally looked at him, and Marcus saw something in her eyes that broke his heart. Shame. His brave, brilliant daughter was ashamed, as if any of this had been her fault. Mom wanted to, Emma said. But I begged her not to. You were doing something important. The assignment was almost over. I thought I could handle it until you got home. Handle it? Marcus could not keep the disbelief from his voice. Emma, this is not something you handle alone. This is something we report to the police. Emma shook her head violently. No police. Dad, please. It would make everything worse. How could it possibly be worse? Emma's next words hit him like a physical blow. Because Derek's father is Chief Inspector Williams. He's the one who would take the report. Derek already told everyone at school that I'm making up stories for attention because my dad is never around. Who's going to believe me against the police chief's son? Marcus sat back on his heels, the full scope of the situation becoming clear. His daughter had been attacked by someone with connections, someone whose father held significant power in their small community, the same community where Marcus and Sarah had built their life, where James still had 2 years of high school remaining. Mom's been worried sick, Emma continued. She's been calling the school every day, but they say it's just teenage drama. Mrs. Patterson filed a report about the classroom incident, but Derek claimed we were just studying together and I fell when I got startled. The bureaucratic runaround was familiar to Marcus from his work with government agencies. Official channels moved slowly, and influential people knew how to manipulate the system to protect their own interests. Show me, Marcus said quietly. What? Show me all of it. Every bruise, every cut. I need to see what he did to you. Emma hesitated, then slowly rolled up her sleeves. Marcus had to bite his tongue to keep from cursing. The bruises on her arms formed perfect handprints where Derek had grabbed her. Scratches ran along her forearms where she had tried to defend herself. There's more, she whispered, lifting the edge of her shirt to reveal bruising along her ribs. He kicked me when I was on the ground. Marcus stood up slowly, his mind already shifting into tactical mode. Years of security work had taught him to compartmentalize emotions and focus on objectives. Right now, his objective was crystal clear. Pack a bag, he told Emma. Just essentials for a few days. Dad, what are you doing? Marcus was already moving toward the door. I'm going to have a conversation with Derek Thompson. Sarah was waiting at the bottom of the stairs when Marcus came down. One look at his face told her everything she needed to know. She had seen this expression before during the early years of their marriage when Marcus worked regular security. Details. It was the look of a man who had identified a threat and was preparing to eliminate it. Marcus, we need to talk about this, she said, stepping into his path. I know what you're thinking, but we have to be smart. Smart? Marcus's voice was deadly quiet. My daughter has been brutalized by some piece of trash and you want me to be smart about it? James appeared from the kitchen, still holding a sandwich. He looked between his parents, sensing the tension that filled the room like electricity before a storm. What's going on? James asked. Marcus looked at his son, seeing not the boy who had hugged him an hour ago, but a young man who would soon be facing the same world that had hurt his sister. A world where predators like Derek Thompson walked free while their victims suffered in silence. Your sister was attacked at school, Marcus said simply. I'm going to make sure it doesn't happen again. Sarah grabbed Marcus's arm as he headed for the door. Listen to me. Derek's father is Chief Inspector Williams. If you go over there and do something stupid, you'll be the one who ends up in jail. Then what happens to Emma? What happens to this family? Marcus stopped walking, but did not turn around. What would you have me do, Sarah? Let him get away with it? Wait for the system to protect our daughter the same way it's been protecting her for the past week? We document everything, Sarah said. We take pictures of her injuries. We get medical records. We build a case that even Williams can't ignore. While Derek walks around free to do this to someone else? Sarah's grip tightened on his arm. While we make sure our family survives this intact, Emma needs her father at home, not in prison for assault. Marcus turned to face his wife, and she saw the war being fought behind his eyes. The trained professional who understood consequences was battling the father who wanted nothing more than to destroy the person who had hurt his child. I spent 3 months protecting someone else's kid, Marcus said. Every morning I woke up thinking about potential threats to Prince William. Every evening I planned security routes and emergency protocols. I memorized the faces of every person who came within 50 feet of him. And while I was being the perfect bodyguard, my own daughter was being terrorized. That's not your fault, Sarah said. Isn't it? Marcus pulled away from her. Emma said it herself. I was supposed to protect people, but I wasn't here to protect her. James had been listening quietly, but now he stepped forward. Dad, there's something else you should know. Both parents turned to look at him. James glanced toward the stairs, making sure Emma could not hear, then lowered his voice. Derek's been spreading stories at school, James said, about Emma, saying she wanted it but changed her mind when she got scared. Some of the guys on the football team are believing him. Marcus felt the careful control he had been maintaining begin to slip. It was one thing to know his daughter had been physically attacked. It was another to learn that her reputation was being destroyed as well. How long has this been going on? Marcus asked. Since Monday, James said. I've been getting into fights, defending her, but coach says if I keep it up, I'll get kicked off the team. Sarah closed her eyes. The situation was worse than she had realized, spreading through their community like poison. Soon everyone would have heard some version of Derek's lies, and the truth would become even harder to establish. There's more, James continued. Derek's been telling people that Emma's family has connections to the Royal Guard, and that we think we're better than everyone else. He's making it sound like Emma thought she was too good for him. Marcus understood the strategy immediately. Derek was not just covering up his crime. He was systematically destroying Emma's credibility while positioning himself as the victim of class discrimination. It was a sophisticated approach for a teenager, which suggested he had help crafting the narrative. His father taught him well, Marcus said quietly. The doorbell rang, cutting through the tension in the room. Through the front window, Marcus could see a police car parked in their driveway. 2 officers stood on the front porch, one of them speaking into his radio. Sarah's face went pale. They're here about the school incident. Marcus straightened his shoulders and walked to the door. Years of dealing with law enforcement had taught him to project confidence even in difficult situations. He opened the door and nodded professionally to the officers. Good evening, officers. How can I help you? The taller officer consulted a small notebook. Mr. Wellington, we're here about an incident involving your daughter at Westfield High School. We'd like to ask her a few questions. About what specifically? Marcus asked. There was a disturbance in one of the classrooms on Thursday afternoon, the second officer said. A young man claims your daughter attacked him without provocation. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Derek had gotten to the police first, spinning his version of events before Emma had a chance to tell the truth. It was a tactical move that showed just how dangerous the Thompson family could be. My daughter was the victim of an assault, Marcus said carefully. She has injuries that prove it. The first officer made a note. We'll need to see those injuries and get her statement. Is she available to speak with us? Marcus glanced back at Sarah, who had moved to stand beside him. They both knew this was a critical moment. How they handled the next few minutes could determine whether Emma would get justice or become the target of a criminal investigation herself. "She's upstairs," Marcus said. "But I want to make something clear before you speak with her. My daughter is 16 years old and she's been traumatized. She needs support, not interrogation." The taller officer smiled thinly. "We're just gathering facts, Mr. Wellington. No one's being interrogated." But Marcus could read the subtext in their expressions. These officers had already decided who was telling the truth, and it was not Emma. They were here to build a case against his daughter, not to investigate the crime committed against her. "Give me a moment to prepare her," Marcus said. He closed the door and turned to face his family. Emma had appeared at the top of the stairs, having heard the voices. She looked terrified, clutching the banister with white knuckles. "They're here about Derek," Marcus said quietly. "He's told them you attacked him." Emma's legs seemed to give out and she sat down hard on the top step. "I can't do this," she whispered. "I can't face them." Marcus looked at his broken daughter, then at his wife and son who were depending on him to find a solution. In that moment, he made a decision that would change everything for his family. Marcus climbed the stairs two at a time and knelt beside Emma. Her whole body was shaking and he could see the panic in her eyes. This was exactly what Derek had planned, to make her so afraid that she would not be able to defend herself when questioned. "Look at me, sweetheart," Marcus said gently. "I know you're scared, but you didn't do anything wrong. We're going to tell them exactly what happened, and I'm going to be with you every step of the way." "But what if they don't believe me?" Emma whispered. "What if they arrest me?" "They won't," Marcus said with more confidence than he felt. "Because we're going to do this right. Sarah, get the camera. We're documenting everything before those officers come upstairs." Sarah hurried to get their digital camera while Marcus helped Emma to her feet. In her bedroom, he carefully photographed every visible injury, making sure to capture the handprint bruises on her arms and the defensive wounds on her knuckles. Emma winced as she moved, but she cooperated silently. "James," Marcus called downstairs. "Ask the officers to wait in the living room. Tell them Emma is getting dressed and will be down in a few minutes." While Sarah continued taking photographs, Marcus opened his laptop and began typing rapidly. Years of writing security reports had taught him the importance of detailed documentation. He recorded the time, date, location, and circumstances of each injury, creating an official record that would be harder for anyone to dismiss. "Dad," Emma said quietly, "there's something else I need to tell you." Marcus looked up from the computer. "What is it?" "Derek didn't just attack me once," she said. "It started 3 weeks ago with smaller things. He would corner me in the hallway and press against me. He grabbed me in the parking lot after school and tried to kiss me. Thursday was just the worst time, but it's been building up for weeks." Marcus felt his anger reach a new level. This was not a single incident but a pattern of escalating behavior. Derek had been stalking and harassing Emma systematically, testing her boundaries and increasing his aggression when she resisted. "Why, didn't you tell anyone sooner?" Sarah asked. "Because I thought I could handle it," Emma said. "And because every time I tried to avoid him, he would tell his friends that I was playing hard to get. He made it sound like we were dating, like this was all some kind of game." Marcus saved the document and closed the laptop. The situation was even worse than he had initially understood. Derek had been grooming Emma, isolating her and building a narrative that would discredit her if she ever tried to report his behavior. "We're going downstairs now," Marcus said. "Emma, I want you to tell the officers exactly what you just told me. Start from the beginning, include every incident, and don't leave anything out." The family descended the stairs together. The two police officers were sitting in the living room, looking around at the family photos and commendations on the walls. Marcus noticed them paying particular attention to his Royal Service awards and the formal photographs of him with various members of the royal family. "Officers, this is my daughter Emma," Marcus said formally. "Before we begin, I want to establish a few ground rules." The taller officer looked annoyed. "Mr. Wellington, we're conducting an official investigation. You don't get to set rules." Actually, I do, Marcus replied calmly. My daughter is a minor, which means I have the right to be present during any questioning. I also have the right to record this conversation for her protection. Marcus set his phone on the coffee table and activated the recording app. The officers exchanged glances but did not object. They knew the law as well as he did. Emma sat between her parents on the couch, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Marcus could feel her trembling, but her voice was steady when she began to speak. 3 weeks ago, Derek Thompson started following me around school, she began. At first, I thought it was just coincidence, but then he started appearing wherever I went. He would stand too close in the hallway and make comments about my body. The officers took notes as Emma continued her story, describing each incident in chronological order. Marcus was proud of how clearly she presented the facts, despite her obvious fear. Sarah held Emma's hand, providing silent support. When Emma reached the part about Thursday's assault, her voice began to break. Marcus leaned forward, ready to intervene if the questioning became too aggressive. "And you fought back?" the second officer asked. "Yes," Emma said. "I scratched his face and tried to push him away. That's when he got really angry and started hitting me." "So you admit to physically attacking Derek Thompson?" Marcus felt his temper flare. The officer was trying to trap Emma with her own words, making her defense sound like aggression. "She admits to defending herself from sexual assault," Marcus said firmly. "Which is her legal right." The first officer looked up from his notebook. "Mr. Wellington, we've spoken with Derek Thompson and several witnesses. Their version of events is quite different from what your daughter is telling us." "What witnesses?" Emma asked. "Students who saw you arguing with Derek in the hallway earlier that day," the officer replied. "They say you were flirting with him, leading him on." Emma's face flushed. "That's not true. I was trying to get away from him." "Derek says you asked him to meet you in the empty classroom," the second officer continued. "He claims you initiated physical contact, then changed your mind and attacked him when he tried to leave." Marcus could see exactly what was happening. Derek had prepared his story carefully, recruiting friends to corroborate a false narrative. He had turned Emma's attempts to escape his harassment into evidence of her supposed interest in him. "That's a complete lie," Emma said, her voice getting stronger. "I never asked to meet him anywhere. He followed me to the classroom and cornered me there." The first officer made another note. "Derek has injuries too, you know, scratches on his face and arms that are consistent with being attacked." "Those are defensive wounds from when my daughter fought for her life," Marcus said coldly. "Or evidence that your daughter assaulted a fellow student," the officer replied. Marcus realized that this interview was not an investigation but a performance. The officers had already decided what had happened based on Derek's father's influence. They were going through the motions of gathering evidence while building a case against Emma. "I think we're done here," Marcus said, reaching for his phone to stop the recording. "Actually, we're not," the taller officer said. "We need to take Emma down to the station for a formal statement. She just gave you her statement. She needs to sign an official report, and we need to take photographs of her injuries for evidence." Marcus understood the game now. Once Emma was at the police station, she would be separated from her family. The questioning would become more aggressive, designed to break down her story and force a confession. Meanwhile, Derek would be portrayed as the victim of a violent attack. "My daughter isn't going anywhere without a lawyer present," Marcus said. The officers exchanged another look. This was not how they had expected the conversation to go. "Mr. Wellington," the second officer said, "refusing to cooperate with an investigation makes you look guilty. We're trying to help your daughter here by treating her like a criminal." Marcus stood up, his full height casting a shadow over the seated officers. "I don't think so." The standoff stretched for several seconds before the first officer finally closed his notebook. "We'll be in touch," he said. "Don't leave town." After the officers left, the family sat in stunned silence. Emma was crying quietly, and Sarah looked like she was in shock. James paced by the window, watching the police car disappear down the street. "What happens now?" Sarah asked. Marcus was already reaching for his phone. "Now we fight back. Marcus spent the entire night making phone calls. His years of service to the royal family had connected him with lawyers, investigators, and security experts throughout the country. By sunrise, he had assembled a team that Derek Thompson's father could not intimidate or buy off. The first call had been to Victoria Sterling, a criminal defense attorney who specialized in cases involving police corruption. Marcus had worked with her years earlier when a stalker had threatened one of the royal family's staff members. Victoria was known for her aggressive tactics and her willingness to take on powerful opponents. "Marcus," Victoria said when she arrived at the house early Sunday morning. "I've reviewed the materials you sent me. This is going to be a difficult case, but it's not hopeless." She spread several files across the kitchen table while Sarah made coffee. Emma sat quietly beside her father, looking older than her 16 years. The stress of the past few days had aged her, stealing away the carefree teenager she had been before Derek Thompson entered her life. "The good news is that you documented everything properly," Victoria continued. "The photographs, the timeline, the recorded statement, all of this will be crucial if this goes to court." "If?" Marcus asked. "You mean when?" Victoria's expression was grim. "Marcus, I need to be honest with you about what we're facing. Chief Inspector Williams has been building cases for 25 years. He knows how to work the system, and he has relationships with prosecutors, judges, and police officers throughout this district. So we're supposed to just give up? No, we're supposed to be realistic about our strategy." Victoria pulled out a photograph of Derek Thompson from his school yearbook. "This young man has a history of aggressive behavior that his father has been covering up for years." Sarah leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "I did some digging last night," Victoria said. "Derek was expelled from his previous school for sexually harassing a female teacher. The incident was quietly handled, the record sealed, and the family moved to this district. There was also a complaint filed by a neighbor girl 2 years ago, but it mysteriously disappeared from police files." Emma looked up sharply. "He's done this before?" "Multiple times, according to my sources. His father has been using his position to make these problems go away. But patterns like this leave traces, and I'm very good at finding traces." Marcus felt a surge of hope for the first time since discovering Emma's injuries. If they could prove Derek had a history of predatory behavior, it would destroy his credibility and expose his father's corruption. "What do we need to do?" Marcus asked. "First, we need to get Emma examined by an independent medical expert," Victoria said. "Someone who can document her injuries professionally and testify about the level of force that was used against her." "The police said they needed photographs for evidence," Sarah said. Victoria shook her head. "They want to control the medical examination, choose their own expert who will minimize Emma's injuries and support Derek's version of events. We need our own doctor, someone who works for us." She handed Marcus a business card. "Dr. Patricia Henley specializes in assault cases. She's testified in dozens of trials and she's never been successfully challenged on her expertise." Emma looked frightened. "Do I have to be examined again? It's embarrassing enough already." "I know it's difficult, sweetheart," Victoria said gently. "But medical evidence is crucial in cases like this. Dr. Henley is very professional and understanding. She works with assault victims regularly." While Victoria explained the legal process, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text message. The number was unfamiliar, but the content made his blood run cold. "Tell your daughter to stop lying about Derek or things will get much worse for your family." Marcus showed the message to Victoria, who photographed it immediately. "Witness intimidation," she said. "This actually helps our case. Derek's supporters are getting desperate, which means they know his story won't hold up under scrutiny." "Supporters?" James asked. "You mean his friends from school?" "I mean his father's network," Victoria replied. "Police officers, prosecutors, city council members, anyone who owes Chief Inspector Williams a favor. They're all invested in making this go away quietly." Emma suddenly stood up, her face pale. "I think I'm going to be sick." Sarah hurried after her daughter, leaving Marcus and Victoria alone with James. The teenager had been listening quietly, but now he leaned forward with determination in his eyes. "What can I do to help?" James asked. Victoria studied him appraisingly. How well do you know the kids at your school? Pretty well. I'm friends with people in different grades. I need you to listen carefully to what people are saying about your sister and Derek. Don't engage in arguments or try to defend Emma directly. That will just make you a target. But pay attention to who's spreading stories and what exactly they're saying. Marcus was impressed by Victoria's tactical thinking. She understood that information was power in cases like this, and James could gather intelligence that adults could not access. There's something else, James said quietly. I heard some of the football players talking in the locker room. Derek's been bragging about having connections that will make all of this disappear. What kind of connections? Victoria asked. He said his dad has files on half the people in town, including some of the teachers and coaches at school. He said, anyone who goes against him will regret it. Victoria made notes rapidly. Blackmail and corruption. This gets better and better. Marcus felt sick. The scope of corruption was larger than he had imagined. Chief Inspector Williams was not just protecting his son, he was running a network of intimidation and blackmail that reached throughout their community. How do we fight something like this? Marcus asked. Victoria smiled for the first time since arriving. By going around them entirely. I've already contacted the State Attorney General's office. They have a special unit that investigates police corruption, and they're very interested in what's happening here. Sarah returned to the kitchen looking worried. Emma's feeling better, but she's scared about going to school tomorrow. Some of her friends have been getting threatening messages too. She's not going to school tomorrow, Marcus said firmly, or any day this week. Marcus, she can't hide forever, Sarah protested. She's not hiding. She's protecting herself while we build our case. Marcus turned to Victoria. How long do we have before they try to arrest her? Probably a few days. They'll want to let the weekend pass, let the community buzz with rumors and speculation. By Wednesday or Thursday, they'll move forward with charges claiming they gave Emma time to confess voluntarily. Emma appeared in the doorway looking fragile but determined. I heard what you said about the State Attorney General. Are they really going to help us? Victoria nodded. They've been looking for a way to investigate Chief Inspector Williams for years. Your case might be exactly what they need to open a full investigation. What happens to Derek while all this is going on? Emma asked. He continues with his normal life, Victoria said honestly. Goes to school, plays football, probably tells everyone who will listen about how he's the real victim here. Emma's face hardened. That's not fair. No, it's not. Victoria agreed. But fairness and justice are two different things. We're going to focus on getting justice. Marcus's phone rang. The caller ID showed a number from the Royal Protection Unit, his former colleagues. He answered immediately. Wellington here. Marcus, it's David Chen from the unit. I heard through the grapevine that you're having some trouble with local police. Thought you might need some assistance. Marcus felt a wave of relief. David Chen was one of the most respected investigators in the country, with connections that reached far beyond the local political network that protected Derek Thompson. David, I could definitely use some help. It's my daughter. She's been assaulted, and the local police are trying to charge her instead of the perpetrator. Give me the details, David said. Marcus quickly outlined the situation while Victoria listened approvingly. Having Scotland Yard connections involved would change the entire dynamic of the case. I'll make some calls, David said when Marcus finished. There are people in the government who owe you favors, Marcus. Time to collect on them. After Marcus hung up, Victoria was smiling broadly. Now we're talking. Royal Protection Unit involvement means this case will get attention at the highest levels of government. Emma looked confused. What does that mean exactly? It means Derek Thompson's father just discovered that he's not the most powerful person in this fight, Victoria explained. Your father spent 15 years protecting people who have real power. People who can make Chief Inspector Williams look like exactly what he is, a small-town bully. Marcus felt the tide turning for the first time since this nightmare began. But he knew the hardest part was still ahead. Derek and his father would not give up easily, and desperate people often took desperate measures. What's our next move? He asked Victoria. We go on the offensive, she replied. Tomorrow morning I'm filing a formal complaint against Chief Inspector Williams with the State Attorney General. I'm also requesting a restraining order against Derek Thompson and I'm demanding that Emma's case be transferred to state jurisdiction. Will that work? It will get their attention. And once the state takes over, the local corruption network loses its power to control the outcome. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in the corridor outside a state courthouse watching through the window as Derek Thompson was led away in handcuffs. The young man who had terrorized his daughter was no longer the confident predator who thought his father's badge made him untouchable. He looked exactly like what he was, a frightened teenager who had finally been caught. The state attorney general's investigation had moved with remarkable speed once Victoria filed the formal complaints. Within days, investigators had uncovered the pattern of corruption that Chief Inspector Williams had been running for years. Derek's previous victims came forward, emboldened by the knowledge that someone was finally listening to them. Emma emerged from the courtroom flanked by Victoria and Sarah. She looked tired but relieved, the weight of weeks of legal proceedings finally lifted from her shoulders. The trial had been difficult, with Derek's lawyers trying everything they could to discredit her testimony, but the evidence was overwhelming, and the jury had deliberated for less than 2 hours. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" Marcus asked, pulling his daughter into a hug. "Like I can breathe again," Emma said quietly. "Like maybe things can go back to normal." Victoria gathered her files, satisfaction evident on her face. Derek Thompson had been convicted on multiple charges, including sexual assault, witness intimidation, and conspiracy. His father was facing his own trial for corruption, obstruction of justice, and abuse of power. "The school board meeting is tonight," Sarah said. "They're voting on the new anti-harassment policies." The scandal had rocked the entire community. Parents demanded answers about how Derek's behavior had been ignored for so long, and several school administrators had been forced to resign. Emma had become an unwitting symbol of the fight against institutional cover-ups, though she would have preferred to remain anonymous. James jogged up to join them, still wearing his football uniform from afternoon practice. He had become something of a hero among his teammates for standing up to Derek's supporters, and his courage had inspired other students to speak out about harassment they had witnessed or experienced. "Coach says the athletic department is implementing new training for all the teams," James said. "They're bringing in counselors to talk about consent and respect." Marcus felt proud of his son, who had grown up considerably during the past month. The family crisis had tested all of them, but it had also revealed strengths they did not know they possessed. "What happens now?" Emma asked as they walked toward the parking garage. "Now you get to be a normal teenager again," Victoria said. "Go to college, pursue your dreams, live your life without looking over your shoulder." Emma nodded, but Marcus could see the changes the experience had left on her. She was more cautious now, more aware of the dangers that existed in the world. But she was also stronger, more confident in her ability to fight for herself and others. The drive home was quiet, each family member lost in their own thoughts. The past month had been the most challenging period of Marcus's life, including his years of high-risk security work. Protecting strangers was one thing. Watching his own daughter suffer and fighting for her justice was something entirely different. As they pulled into their driveway, Marcus noticed a familiar black sedan parked across the street. David Chen stepped out and walked over to meet them, his face serious but not alarmed. "Congratulations on the conviction," David said, shaking Marcus's hand. "Justice was served today." "Thanks to you and your connections," Marcus replied. "I owe you a debt I can never repay." David waved off the gratitude. "Actually, I'm here because there's something you should know. The royal family has been following this case closely. They wanted me to deliver a message." He handed Marcus an official envelope bearing the royal seal. Inside was a handwritten letter from Prince William himself, expressing his admiration for Marcus's dedication to his family and his courage in fighting corruption. The letter concluded with an offer, a position as head of a new royal family initiative focused on protecting young people from predators and bullies. "They want you back?" Emma asked, reading over her father's shoulder. Marcus looked at the letter, then at his family. The opportunity was incredible, a chance to use his experience to help other families avoid what they had gone through. But it would mean more travel, more time away from home. "What do you think?" he asked Emma. Should your old dad go back to protecting royalty? Emma was quiet for a moment, considering the question seriously. I think you should do whatever makes you happy, Dad. But I also think you proved something these past few weeks. What's that? That the most important people you'll ever protect are right here at home. Marcus folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. He would need time to consider the offer carefully, to discuss it with Sarah and weigh the implications for their family's future. But right now, all he wanted was to be home with the people he loved. That evening, the Wellingtons sat together in their living room, sharing a quiet dinner and watching James's football highlights on television. Emma was curled up in her favorite chair, reading a college brochure and making notes about degree programs. Sarah was working on a crossword puzzle, occasionally asking for help with difficult clues. It was exactly the kind of ordinary, peaceful evening that Marcus had dreamed about during those long nights in Europe. The kind of evening that Derek Thompson had tried to steal from them and that they had fought to reclaim. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. For a moment his old instincts kicked in and he tensed. But the message was not a threat. It was a thank you from another parent whose daughter had found the courage to report harassment at school after hearing about Emma's case. More families are speaking up, Marcus told his wife. Emma's courage is inspiring other people to fight back. Emma looked up from her college materials. Maybe that's the most important thing that came out of all this. Maybe Derek won't be able to hurt anyone else because people know they don't have to suffer in silence. Marcus realized his daughter was right. Their battle had been about more than just one family's quest for justice. It had been about breaking a cycle of intimidation and fear that had protected predators while silencing their victims. Outside, the sun was setting over their quiet suburban street. Children played in their yards while parents tended gardens and neighbors chatted over fences. It was the kind of community where people looked out for each other, where families like the Wellingtons could build good lives and raise their children safely. Derek Thompson and his father had tried to poison that community with corruption and fear, but they had failed. And now other families would be safer because of Emma's courage and the Wellington family's refusal to accept injustice. Marcus looked around at his family, his wife, his brave daughter, his loyal son, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had spent 15 years protecting other people's families, but in the end, his own family had been the ones worth fighting for above all else. The royal letter remained unopened on the kitchen counter, and Marcus knew that whatever decision he made about his future, it would be guided by the lesson he had learned over the past month. The most important job he would ever have was being a father, a husband, and a protector of the people he loved most in the world.